After that gospel passage took place, it's not recorded in history, but I'm pretty sure Mary said to Martha, "I told you I'd do the dishes." Actually, this gospel passage that we had today has been used by many people over the years to show that God prefers a contemplative lifestyle to an active lifestyle. Contemplative lifestyle being those men and women who enter cloisters, spend their entire life in prayer. And then the active lifestyle is the rest of us who work for a living, who raise families, do things like that. And so this instance when Martha complains and Jesus says, "Martha, Martha, you're so concerned about so much. Mary has chosen the better part." They use that then to indicate that God prefers those who spend their time in prayer. I suspect if it got late that evening and there was no food on the table, Jesus would have perhaps changed his mind. But you see, you put that gospel with the first reading we had from the book of Genesis, and it sort of confuses matters because Abraham sees these three visitors coming by, and hospitality was part and parcel of the ancient Israelites' tradition. And so Abraham goes out to him, and he doesn't say, let me do you a favor and give you food. Abraham says, do me a favor and allow me to give you water to wash your feet, some bread, some meat, some milk. And so he's running all over the place, getting all of this set up. And clearly, these visitors, who it's assumed are really representatives of God himself, they tell him in response to his stewardship, in response to his help for them, he said, "We'll come back 1 year from now, and Sarah will be with child." In other words, Abraham was blessed because of the actions he was doing. And so why is Abraham blessed and Martha criticized? I think, at least in my mind, I've reflected on this, and I think it's not so much what they did as why they did it. Martha is whining and complaining. Abraham is just enthralled that he has the opportunity to reach out to these visitors and to serve them. In other words, it's not what we do, it's why we do it. Whether you care to admit this or not, God, in creating us, has put a little homing device in each of us. And the only way we can truly be satisfied is if we allow that homing device to be attracted to God, where it finds its ultimate home. And so it doesn't matter whether you have faith or not. Matter of fact, the other day I was at the wood shop here in Sun City West working, and this guy, they all know I'm a priest, so I have to really watch out what I say. But this one guy says, "Well, I'm an atheist." And I said, "Well, congratulations, how's that working for you?" The fact that whether we admit it or not, God has made us so that we can only find completion in relation to him. That's the only way we get it. We can deny it, doesn't matter. That's the fact, that we can only find completion, we can find fullness in relation to God. And therefore, whatever we do, it needs to be for the reason of growing closer to God. That's what determines whether something is of value or not. I mean, you can take someone who joins a cloister to pray all the time. Matter of fact, there was this guy who joined this cloistered community of men. They were allowed only 2 words a year. And at the end of the first year, this man goes to see his superior, and the superior says, "What would you like to say?" And the man says, "Food's cold." He goes back to his cell, prays for another year. At the end of the second year, he comes to the superior again, and the superior says, "Well, what do you have to say this year?" And the man said, "Bed's hard." Goes back to his cell, and he prays for a while, and finally he comes back to the superior, and he says, "I've had it with this place. I'm leaving. This is not for me." And the superior says to him, "Well, I'm not surprised at all, because since you've been here, you've done nothing but complain." You see, you can choose, this path of contemplation. You can choose an active lifestyle, but what makes it work is why we're doing it. If we're doing it to grow closer to God, it works. And if we're not doing it to grow closer to God, it won't work. I don't care what you're doing. Most of us have been called to the active state of life. You've raised families, you've held jobs, you've raised kids, you've done all kinds of things, and that's your vocation. Whether it's that or as a deacon, as a priest, as a religious, it doesn't matter what our job is, it matters why we do it. And so I can go through my whole life and do holy things and never get holy if I'm not doing them to grow closer to God. We are called to keep moving towards that God so that someday, at the end of time, we will be one with Christ. But it's a constant movement every day. And so you and I, as well as those who spend their entire lives in prayer, are all called to the same thing. The goal is the same, to be united completely with God. The paths to get there may be different, but the goal is the same. And so those who spend their life in prayer, and we need them to pray, and we also need us to pray. It's not like we just run around all the time. But the goal is to be with God. And so as most of us now are in retirement, and even then, it's not like, okay, I'm done now, I can just sort of cruise on until the Grim Reaper comes. That's not it at all. We live our lives, later years, doesn't matter. We still, every day, have to be aware that I'm on this journey. My homing device is zeroing in on God, and I have to do everything I can in my life to let it find God, because that alone is where I will find true happiness.